Cool. So apparently we're live. Hello, everyone. It's Drew Murray from D20. Not done a video for a little while. And I was thinking, okay, well, what am I going to do for the next thing that I do? And I suppose this is a kick up the rear, if nothing else. So, for those that aren't aware, this is a gaming channel, hi. But also, White Wolf. White Wolf. I saw an article circulating in two different groups on Facebook, and both of these groups took very different approaches to the article and the reaction to it. And so I thought that was interesting. I looked a little bit more into it. And this is essentially what I have so far. So I thought I'd give my own 2 cents, because it's nice to stop, take a break from research and collect it all together from time to time. So this is kind of for me as well. So White Wolf, way back in the day, made the Vampire games, the World of Darkness game. So Vampire the Masquerade, Vampire the Requiem, Werewolf the Forsaken, I think, Mage the Awakening, and a whole bunch of others. They had like a demon one, and then they had like a god in the machine, like core system that was never really embraced as the core of the system. Vampire was always like the baseline, like that's the one that everyone went to and did stuff with. But you had werewolves. I played a bit of Promethean the Created as well, which I loved. I thought that was fantastic. And that was my first introduction to World of Darkness. But yeah, so it had all these different game systems portraying different kinds of otherworldly elements. And they were, for better or worse, all part of the same universe. They had very similar mechanics, at least the way that they handled like skills and base stats and things. You could jury rig getting the different systems to work together, and that's fine. But yeah, it was a thing that you did to play tabletop role-playing games. That's what it is. Very narrative focused. The mechanics are not crunchy like Pathfinder is, or D&D 3.5. They weren't as well refined as D&D 4th edition. They weren't as user-friendly and approachable as D&D 5th edition. They didn't have a fantastic separation of mechanics and fluff that I enjoy and that Wizards of the Coast have been refining over the years to make it very clear this is the story, this is how the game works. Especially Vampire the Requiem. That was the first vampire book that I picked up, and it is confusing as all get out. It is something that confused me because it kept referring to things that were either capitalized or repeated enough that it made sense that that would be considered a mechanic. So it was vitae in the blood. So, okay, Vampire, the Requiem, vitae. Let's have a look at blood. We have a look at blood. Blood has vitae in it. Fantastic. What does vitae do? What are the mechanical elements of vitae? We'll go and have a look later on in the feeding section, which is separate from the blood, curiously. And that, again, makes reference to vitae. It's the life essence, the magic inside of someone's blood. And people have different kinds of vitae going on. But also, separate to vitae, the different kinds of people, when they have their blood drunk, they will affect a vampire in certain ways, just as a vampire affects his environment in certain ways. So, okay. What's vitae? So they were very confusing books. They weren't very clear. I've recently gone back and read the 20th anniversary of Vampire the Masquerade, not the Requiem, and that's a bit clearer. Anyway, so that's White Wolf making the World of Darkness books. They then, as far as my understanding and research has gone so far, they went away, they collapsed, they're defunct, and someone else bought the rights, and they took the name White Wolf, so it's a new White Wolf publishing. There's a few supporters of the old White Wolf and a few artists and writers that worked on previous White Wolf products working on this one, so it feels like a continuation. And it's Onyx Press, Obsidian Press? I don't know. It's abbreviated to OPP in a lot of the discourse here. They have decided that they are going to release a Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition. And the previous versions of Vampire and other World of Darkness products didn't really use edition monikers. They simply changed. So it was Vampire the Masquerade, Vampire the Requiem. But of course, Masquerade had several iterations with subtly different mechanics going on. But they didn't really use edition. It was Old World of Darkness, Classic World of Darkness, and New World of Darkness. Which then begs the question of, okay, but you've got Old, Classic, and New. Why is this 5th? Well, Requiem was the other one, which was kind of New World of Darkness, but even then it's complicated, wibbly wobbly. So they've called it 5th edition, I suspect because D&D 5th edition is popular. And so releasing a 5th edition, it could be technically correct that this is the 5th edition of a vampire game, but not Vampire the Masquerade. Yeah, call it Vampire 5th edition. You do you. Someone wrote an article, and it was Dogs with Dice, I believe. I've got a tab open here. Yes, Dog with Dice. My apologies. I've not done an awful lot of research into Dog with Dice specifically, but I understand that it's someone who lives in the UK, just like me, and they identify with the LGBTQ community quite strongly, and that's fine. But they wrote an article that was inflammatory towards White Wolf and certain members therein. It was accusing the new 5th edition of... do you have a link to the post? Here's the thing. So, Darius Jonah. They have taken it down since. I will send you a link to the post and the fact that the page has been taken down now. So it's an article called... a post on their blog called White Wolf Are Dead to Me. Read more here. And it was titled, How New White Wolf Marketed Vampire the Masquerade to the Alt-Right and Neo-Nazis. And here, can I post it in the chat? I can post it in the chat. There you go. There's the link. But at the moment, right now, it says that the page has been taken down. So they wrote this page, and I managed to read some of it before it was taken down. I was jumping between a few things, but by the time I got back to it, it unfortunately was taken down. What the page was pointing out was that some of the pre-generated characters were indicative of very strange things that you would want your heroic characters to be like. One of them was a person who liked children, surrounded themselves with children, and fed from children. Blood drinking in Vampire the Requiem, the really complicated book that I was struggling to find information on, that made it very, very clear, along with other World of Darkness references, that blood drinking is sexual. It is a pleasurable act, and in some cases is augmented by sex, or supplants sex for vampires. And feeding from other vampires allows you to steal power. You get to take elements of who you're feeding from. So feeding from a child would probably fill you with immense joy and just like a childlike wonder of the world in some abstract way. Make you a more emotionally driven person, perhaps. But feeding from children has suggestions and connotations of perhaps pedophilia. And that's one of the things pointed out in the article. How this connects to the far right and neo-Nazis, it's unclear. But the point that this person was writing about the pedophilia aspect and saying, look, this is what these people are supporting, that's what quite a few people took exception to. Now, reading through this article, it was becoming more and more clear that they had some points, but the beginning of the article was very vague and didn't quite convince me. That pre-gen character didn't quite convince me that they were supportive of far-right fascistic movements because they had a pedophile pre-gen character. that wasn't explicitly a pedophile. You had to interpret that into it, but I could see the point that that's fairly clear. However, White Wolf's products throughout the entirety of its iterations have always been about you being a monster. You've got a morality and a code. You've got to try and maintain your humanity. And you can have characters that you play or encounter, or both, that have abandoned certain social, cultural, and political mores and are just indulging in the baser instincts and baser wants and needs, that they would partake in things like this. Having it in the playtest material, I think, is perhaps either a risky maneuver, and that they would have embraced as this is risky, or that they were wanting to definitely differentiate themselves from other games on the market during this explosion of love for role-playing games. So they were trying to target a more mature audience. And I mean what I say when I say a more mature audience. I can't recall if it was Plato. I think it was Plato. One of the early Greek philosophers, Plato or Aristotle, that made a point of saying that the sign of a healthy and inquisitive mind is one that can entertain an idea without upholding it. So you can explore these things. You can play an evil character. You can even play someone who likes children, as abhorrent as the idea is. That's kind of the point. You get this visceral thrill from this awful thing that you're exploring. It's a thought experiment. It's an idea. Hopefully, no one is actually actively role-playing those elements. That's where I would start to feel uncomfortable. That's where my line is. I would be fine role-playing a person who has that in their background, and that's like off-camera stuff that happens to inform how bad that character is. Going in depth into narrative description of those acts, that's where I would become very uncomfortable. I don't begrudge White Wolf for adding that in. Some of their members of staff, according to the article that's been taken down, reportedly were misogynistic and transphobic, and demonstrated this in previous works and reports of them in previous employment. And White Wolf came out in support and celebration of this person for work that they had done for White Wolf. And the article writer demonstrated that this is indicative of supporting this person through and through. I disagree with the point, but I don't condemn the pointing out that this person isn't a great person. I think that public relations is a tricky business. It's not clear cut. You basically are like on the high seas. Sometimes what could be a PR nightmare just passes you by because of other things and distractions. Sometimes you get capsized by it and you need to right the ship. This is one of those times where the seas are tossing and turning and it could go either way. If more of a deal is made about this, then they would likely drop associations with this person or take a staunch stance and say, no, we are strictly supporting the work that he has done and not his past. Either way would be fine. I don't think I have strong feelings one way or the other about that. In the end, what matters is, are people being hurt? Because you can't affect the past. I do strongly believe that the past should never be ignored, however. And there's maybe a bit of a paradox, but that'll be something that I need to sort of work out in my own head. But I think that if White Wolf is trying to market to the far right by pressing buttons and trying to upset a few people, supporting people that have unsavory views, having playtest material that is uncomfortable for most people that don't think about these things an awful lot and don't like these things, you tend to get people willing to entertain more dangerous ideas and claim that they are either just thought experiments or that they don't have any weight to them in far-right communities and even just right-leaning communities. which some people say that they're associated, they're the same, and that they're not. I find myself much more of a political centrist, with vastly left-leaning tendencies. I like to think of myself as central. I'm quite left-leaning, in fact, but I don't like to get political about things an awful lot. But I am adamant that discussion needs to take place when it comes to politics. I don't think that what White Wolf is doing in terms of their product is political. I don't think that what they are bringing to the table is meant to be used in that sort of way. Something that I saw on Twitter, which I will see if I can find the link to. It pointed out that someone on Twitter had screen capped part of the playtest material. Here it is. So there's an example in the playtest material, and one of the example roles that demonstrates that there's 2 successes is the numbers 1, 4, 8, and 8, which apparently is white supremacist symbolism. This is 1-4 for a 14-word statement about white supremacy, and 8-8 for the 8th letter of the alphabet, which is H. HH, a 2-word phrase beginning with HH, very popular in Germany from 1936 to 1945. And popular with certain groups around the world today. I think that's a bit of a stretch. I think that's conspiracy crafting, that's the case. I don't think that that's an indication of symbolism in the book. There certainly seems to be a lot of little things here and there, but they're all very tinfoil hattish, is my reading of things so far. There are fantastic Twitter sort of rants, which I will find the links to and put in the description when I've finished, unless I can quickly find them here. Can I quickly find them? Quickly. Is it going to be quick or is it not? It looks like this is not going to be quick, so I will not. But yes, on Twitter, I did find a couple of people, one of which formerly wrote White Wolf products, and the other, I don't know what the connection to things is, but they were pointing out the article and some issues with the article itself, saying that the article was overreaching and conspiracy crafting, that sort of thing. And I'd agree to a certain extent. I think that the article was impassioned. I think that this person was very upset that there was potentially this right-wing RPG on the rise and becoming quite popular. I don't think that it's becoming popular with the kinds of people that they think it is. I can't imagine Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition being brought out at rallies and things and being played by people who hate groups of people. I can't picture that in my head. To me, role-playing is exploring ideas. It's the science fiction of its day. Science fiction and things like Star Trek: The Next Generation, fantastic. You could explore different ideas. You could explore what would it be like if there was a society where the gender roles were reversed. What if there was no gender allowed? You had to be asexual. What if there was one where there were 3 genders, such as in Star Trek Enterprise? But not even just gender things. What if we encountered a Dyson sphere? What if we encountered godly beings that could affect us in great ways and we had no power to stop them? All these sorts of things. Deep Space Nine. What if you were shrunk by going through a wormhole? I think some of their fluff episodes were not as good. However, role-playing games does this. It allows us to explore things in little thought experimenty type ways and see how characters would react to those in a very visceral and entertaining way. And I don't see that happening in places where they don't want people to think and they want people to just adhere to a strict dogmatic approach to life. So if you're being told that lots of people hate you, why would you give them tools to explore, okay, but what if we're in a world where no one hates us? But it's just like this one. And then they find out that there's no way to tell the difference. So then how would you prove that they do hate you? Okay, if you do manage to find a way to prove it, test it in the game. What about testing it in the real world? And it gets dismantled. So it's the same reason why the Mormons that come around to my house aren't keen on role-playing games, but they're fine with board games. Because role-playing games, they get the opportunity to explore a whole bunch of things. I invited them round to my house to play some role-playing games. They gave me this copy of Risk that apparently had caused too many arguments in their household, and so we talk about board games an awful lot. I'm trying to save the Mormons by talking to them and just getting them to talk, and eventually they'll realize some logical inconsistencies. Unfortunately, they get cycled out by the time that happens, and we just chat on Facebook afterwards, and most of them end up just becoming spiritual or atheist after that. But I'm deliberately non-aggressive in my conversion. I just ask them questions and let them think about things. But I think if you can have religion and it be non-disruptive to your life, then that's fine. I don't bother. But anyway, I digress. They were told by the upper echelons that they were not allowed to indulge in role-playing games. And I'd imagine it would be the same with the more sort of cultish right-wing groups. Once you start exploring ideas and dismantling constructs that we have in the world, you start to realize issues with things. There is an issue with overindulging in that sort of behavior as well. You can dismantle things to the point where nothing makes sense. You can abstract everything so that you cannot tell what's up and what's down. So there's certainly a pinch of salt to be taken, which is why, especially early role-playing games, they seem to have this forward wisdom to read and consume as much knowledge as you could. The original Dungeons & Dragons had reading lists so that you'd know how medieval worlds worked. So I would say the same thing applies here. I'm going to wrap this up now. White Wolf has had accusations lobbied against them by a journalist. This journalist has since taken the article down. I don't think that's an indication that necessarily the article was altogether wrong. I think that they collected some good information, but were over-inflammatory with how they presented it. I think that White Wolf would do well to address these concerns and to do so directly. Much like Wizards of the Coast has celebritized somewhat some of their staff, White Wolf needs a figurehead. They need someone to come out and say, look, this was our intent. This is what we wanted to do with this. Have a community face. It's something that Wizards of the Coast inadvertently got all of a sudden with the rise of like YouTube gaming and that sort of thing. Geek and Sundry had a lot to do with that. And now with their podcast and their D&D Beyond stuff, they're out there confronting controversies directly. White Wolf needs the same. I am not going to withdraw any support for White Wolf at the moment. I think that they're creating a product that is going to be interesting to explore. I don't like the fact that there's a lack of morality mechanic now. But you could easily just shoehorn one in. It'll be fine. So yeah, that's my take on it. I will produce another one of these when more information arises. This seems to be it. This is just how the lay of the land is. The article's been taken down now. There's going to be a lot of argument going back and forth on various forums, Facebook pages, that sort of thing. There's just going to be a lot of people talking about and arguing about this sort of thing. So I thought I'd just come out and say, look, here's the facts of the matter. So yeah, in summary, White Wolf did a couple of things that some people thought were dodgy. One person wrote an article about it, and that article's since been taken down. I don't think The fact that the article has been taken down is indicative of any wrongdoing. I don't think the fact that the article was written indicates any wrongdoing on White Wolf's part either. I just think that given today's current climate, conclusions have been drawn, but they're not necessarily accurate. They may be, they may not be. So yeah, I just think what White Wolf needs someone to come out and talk about it. So